Well, good afternoon, Speaker. It's good to see you and good to see you all. We are on the precipice of an important vote as we move forward the Affordable Energy Act. The genesis of the Affordable Energy Act was the most clearest contrast to the former Liberal government's Green Energy Act, a bill that prioritized affordable energy based on ideological predispositions instead of on affordable energy prices for Ontario families. And the contrast could not be more clear as we prioritize making energy and life more affordable for Ontario families. You will know, Mr. Speaker, that Ontario has a clean energy advantage, which we are going to maintain. Part of the build-out of our renewables through the long-term procurement, the largest competitive procurement in Canadian history that's underway under our progressive Conservative government, in addition to the largest continental nuclear expansion, is creating non-emitting energy that puts Ontario on track to hit near net zero emissions by year 2050 without a carbon tax, without a proposed Liberal clean, quote, clean and electricity regulation, without a mandate, by simply pursuing Canadian clean tech as our baseload solution. And we are proud of the fact that we will get to near net zero in our province by leveraging our clean energy advantage. Nuclear energy, and I know the Speaker today is a strong proponent of that form of energy, in Durham Region no less, as we all are in this province. Mr. Speaker, the Independent Electricity Systems Operator has forecasted a 75% demand in energy surge by 2050. This is perhaps the most consequential public policy challenge we as parliamentarians will face this session. How do we secure reliable, affordable, clean power? How do we ensure our children are set up for success? Because there are jurisdictions around us as we speak where they do not have ample supply, where they are literally knocking on Ontario's doors, among many others, seeking desperately to purchase expensive power. They'll pay at a premium because they are having to defer economic investment. Look no further than the province of Quebec that is having to decline large-scale economic development. And these businesses, sometimes, they may want port access, they may have chosen Quebec for different reasons, but they end up coming back to Ontario saying, look, they don't have the power, and we do. We have the power, we have the plan, and we have the conviction to build out our nuclear fleet and our clean energy advantage for the benefit of our kids. And for the first time in a long time, colleagues, we have a government that is actually thinking about tomorrow. And I know we will disagree on the tactics by which we achieve the big strategic goals we want as a province, but we're talking about, through the Affordable Energy Act, a requirement for long-term integrated 25-year planning, where we force the systems to work together, greater interoperability with our fuels and our natural gas and our electricity. Currently, if this bill does not pass, we are allowing a status quo of Enbridge working with one entity, our natural gas player, and then you have, the ISO involved with electricity, and you have private companies managing fuels, and yet there's no overarching strategy, something that binds our province and our economic interests together. And that's the basis of the Affordable Energy Act, to think about tomorrow, to build out for the future, to safeguard affordability as the northern star of our investments and our economic program. And I will tell you, the lessons learned, even just from LT1, the long-term procurement my predecessor ministers announced, was really critical, because we heard constructive criticism. Look, how do we get more development in the north? How do we get more Indigenous equity participation? How do we create the conditions for all energy sources to compete on a level playing field? Because we believe in technology agnosticism. We do not believe as progressive Conservatives in picking winners and losers based on what makes us feel good or an ideological perspective. It's got to be based on the market, on affordability, on keeping prices low for families and seniors and small businesses. And that's what this bill codifies before us. It signals in the clearest terms that we will make affordability the cornerstone of our economic program, keeping in mind that today, energy bills are up 25% because of an ideological preference of the federal Liberals who have imposed the carbon tax. 25% higher bills are being paid today than they could have been if we didn't have the federal Liberal carbon tax. And what's all related to this is the need for more energy, affordable energy, reliable energy, clean energy, yes. When we think about this public policy challenge, we're talking about 4.5 cities of Toronto. We're talking about 16 Ottawas, 34 Londons, 126 Sudburys. I mean, the demand is massive, Speaker, and it can't come to surprise to anyone. But when we think about building, we think about a vision for Ontario's economic needs, a vision for a clean energy future where we are able to electrify industry, displace coal, and bring more people into the EV revolution, allow for clean electricity to displace other forms of energy that is good for the economy, it is good for the environment, it is good for our families. And, you know, if we take a moment to reflect on the history, the leadership in Ontario when it comes to expanding that clean energy advantage, I think about over 100 years ago, it was Sir Adam Beck, yes, a progressive conservative, but more than that, a great Canadian, the founder of public power, who founded Hydroelectric Power Commission of Ontario and pioneered the hydroelectric dams at Niagara Falls. It was a then progressive conservative premier, John Robarts, who played an instrumental role in leading the nuclear expansion of our province's grid. And it was a then Premier Ernie Eves in 2003, another progressive conservative who adopted the vision to phase out coal power from our province. And Speaker, I'm proud of that lineage. I'm proud of that history, that commitment to expanding affordable, reliable power. And I will tell you, the benefit of that type of focus has allowed us to attract $45 billion in job-creating investment in our auto sector that is so important to all of our families all over Ontario. That clean energy advantage is consequential to attracting investment to our province. And I assure members, we will have, it's not a talking point, do not take it from me, the Independent Electricity Systems Operator has confirmed as recently as last week when they did independent analysis in the Federal Liberal Clean Electricity Regulation, so-called CER, where they confirmed that our expansion of refurbishment and our nuclear fleet, that will bring us to literally near net zero by end of 2050, by 2050. And I'm proud of that achievement. I'm proud that the trajectory we are on is to get to net zero. Now, net zero is not a virtue unless power is affordable, because we also had a Energy Act, the Green Energy Act, that prioritized the environmental element while entirely, dismissing the economic impact of families. We choose to be responsible, pragmatic planners of energy that keeps it clean and abundant, but of course maintains affordability throughout. And that is responsible action that is before the House today, a bill that in its most clearest terms confirms our focus. Because of that type of leadership of our economic program, attracting investment, lowering taxes, slashing red tape, creating the conditions for market certainty, building our infrastructure, logistical supply chain, investing in human capital with the largest skills development fund. These types of initiatives all come together that allowed us to create the conditions for the private sector to create 850,000 plus net new jobs. Now, remember, Mr. Speaker, there was a time when the government of this place, when the former Liberals were here, and they took the position that we should turn away from manufacturing and turn to a service economy. They literally discouraged government from ever focusing on the industrial base or on our manufacturing base because they thought it was part of the economy of yesterday. The Premier of Ontario, for whatever you may agree or disagree with in this House, he has pursued a reindustrialization policy that has allowed us to create the conditions for manufacturing to flourish in the province. We've brought every single auto company, the left or those that have never invested in Ontario, to put their capital in this province, to believe in the promise of Ontario, because from Stellantis to Volkswagen and everything in between, from Windsor all the way to Northern Ontario, we are seeing supply chain and auto expansion that is consequential, that is critical, and that is helping families deliver the bigger paychecks we want and we aspire for all Canadians. And, Mr. Speaker, the Affordable Energy Act also makes clear that we will use competitive procurements to drive our decisions. Remember, the former Liberals were in the business of sole sourcing, They weren't in the business of ensuring we chose based on affordability. This was a party, the former Liberals, who believed it was a virtue to purchase power at 80 cents a kilowatt hour when we had alternatives on the market at 9 to 10 cents. In what world could any parliamentarian look you, Speaker, in the eye and say that was a good return on investment? That was a sham and a total abdication of leadership. And who paid the price? Not big Fortune 500 companies, as the opposition would want us to believe. It was fixed-income pensioners, people who were driven into energy poverty in small towns and big cities. There is no virtue in pricing families out of the necessity, not luxury, of heating their homes this winter. But that is what they will want you to believe. And I believe that is simply not in the interests of our economy, in the interests of our industry, or the interests of our families. You threw me off a second there, but I'm getting back on track to the honourable member. But look, we've seen other assaults on free enterprise principles, other assaults on affordability, on pocketbooks and families. I mean, look, we are now dealing with this proposed clean energy regulation. This is all very relevant to the bill, and I'll explain why. Because the CER imposes a price on carbon, thus making it literally impossible to use all forms of energy after 2035. And I want us to be serious about the choices before government, that we choose to leverage all forms of energy. That includes hydroelectric. We're going to further optimize our fleet. We've invested $1 billion in Eastern Ontario. I will be going to the north to do the same. We will leverage as many megawatts as we can from those assets. We've extended another 30 years in our fleet. But that alone will not provide baseload power, enough baseload power. We're expanding Pickering and Darlington through the refurbishments that are being done on time and on budget. We are building 4 SMRs, small modular reactors, these miniaturized nuclear plants that produce about 300 megawatts of clean, non-emitting power. We're doing 4 of those, 1,200 megawatts. We're going to do the largest procurement in Canadian history, 5,000 megawatts, which is so important. And we are, of course, as well participating in the leverage of new generation, which we announced just last week, Mr. Speaker, where we said there's 3 locations, 3 communities that already have OPG lands, 3 communities that already have the appropriate, licensing and to pursue electricity generation on those communities. And we also have local communities that have, at least so far, said we want to work with you on a potential plan forward. Powerful program to secure energy future, and even still we need to produce more power. So the concept of the federal Liberals introducing a scheme today that will handicap the province, that will literally undermine our ability to generate all forms of electricity, which can include natural gas, as an interim measure, thus increasing further energy bills around $168 per household, a $35 billion hit to our economy, when we know, without a doubt, in absolute terms, we're going to get to the same objective they cite of near net zero by 2050. You could only call that a radical policy, again being imposed by the federal Liberals on the people of this province. It is radical. Like, this is not a talking point. When the carbon tax raises a maturity $170 per megaton, and this is $850, 5 times the current carbon tax, think about the impacts to your families, to gasoline, to home heating. This is the triumph of ideology over affordability, and I think it is negligence of those who believe this is a responsible way forward. Good luck explaining to investors, to families, to new Canadians, to young people that they can achieve the dream of Canada when they can't even afford to heat their home this winter. But frankly, Speaker, there are members in this House who would agree with that premise, who would support, who've actually called on me to adopt the CER as soon as possible, as they have with the carbon tax. But the Clean Energy Act takes a very different position, because we know that clean, non-emitting nuclear power displaces 80 million megatons of GHGs. 80 million megatons a year. That is the equivalent, colleagues, of taking off the roads 15 million vehicles every single year. That is how we maintain a clean grid. That is how we have, among the cleanest grids on Earth. That is how we generate affordable, reliable power for our families, by invoking a policy or a resource that has been time-tested for generations in our province. 75 to 85,000 families directly depend on nuclear power. And we know that nuclear power is being delivered on time and on budget here in Ontario. I recognize that there are headlines that my colleagues will read from the United Kingdom to Georgia to France of projects over budget or not on schedule. I understand that. That is their truth. That is not Ontario's truth. OPG, likewise Bruce, they do something special, and they have all the credit. They deserve the credit. The workers deserve the credit. We put Unit 1 at Darlington Power in your neck of the woods, Mr. Speaker, back on 140 days ahead of schedule, return to the grid. 140 days. The Darlington refurbishment will add a $90 billion net gain to our GDP. That is how we secure the prosperity for our children, how we deliver the affordable energy they deserve. And I'm proud of that record. I mean, the member from Durham, I keep focusing on, my esteemed colleague, but the member from Durham was with me at that announcement. And we thank the workers. This is their achievement, not any governments or any business. This is the achievement of our skilled workforce. But they could do it again. They're doing it. Every single unit refurbishment is being delivered according to that adherence. And I'm proud of their discipline and their work ethic. I think about the largest nuclear expansion in continental history at Bruce Power, where the Minister for Rural Affairs and among many others have been great champions of this project. This is a large-scale, the first large-scale nuclear reactor in 30 years that we're going to be pursuing building. Enough power for 4.8 million homes. This is the responsible, forward-looking, aspirational, clean energy program Canadians deserve. But it will be put in peril by higher taxes, by needless regulation, and by federal or provincial, small L or big L Liberal parties who believe that making energy less abundant and more affordable is somehow a program to prosperity in our province. It is not, and we know that every family will pay the price for this type of rigid adherence to ideology. What we actually need is an element of pragmatism to reign. We're going to get to net zero, Mr. Speaker. We're going to get there. The ISO said so. Don't take it from the politicians who will assert we are or we're not today. Listen to the independent electricity systems operator who has said we will get to net zero by the expansion of nuclear energy and renewable long-term procurement by 2050. We do not need to make it more expensive for families to live in this province and country. We do not need to handicap our ability to attract foreign investment that creates jobs for our private sector workers. And that's the difference between the choices among the parties today. We're expanding Bruce B that secures 5,000 jobs, power for 2 million homes. That was a project that the former Liberals not just would have closed, but colleagues, they would have closed it this year in 2024 on the schedule they announced. Could you imagine, at a time of increasing energy, the former Liberals took the position in their wisdom that they should close Pickering Power and the 2 million homes that depend on it. Thank goodness we do not have the former Liberals in power, Mr. Speaker, because we literally would have been without this brilliant, one of the most best-performing nuclear plants in the world is Pickering, a CANDU facility. 96% of that refurbishment supports not Canadian, Ontario's small businesses. The supply chain is entirely Indigenous to our province and country. I'm often lost for words at what could keep a parliamentarian, hold them back from being an unbridled champion of nuclear energy. It is clean. It produces Canadian jobs. It leverages Canadian technology. It was literally, for generations, has safely, reliably produced the power. We have the storage. We now have one of the largest supplies of uranium next door in Saskatchewan. We process these fuels through Cameco in Ontario at Port Hope, among many other communities. We are the dream of the world of a one-stop integrated supply chain of nuclear power, and I want us to be proud of that. And the Clean and the Affordable Energy Act leverages that goodwill to the world. It allows us to sell that value proposition of on time and on budget to all communities of Ontario. And this is not just about nuclear. I know it's my area of focus, but Speaker, we're also the party. Whereas the former government purchased expensive renewable power, again, I'm technology agnostic. I have no opposition for or against any energy source. But they produced or purchased expensive renewable energy without the ability to store it, not a megawatt of storage. In what world is this disjointed program something we want to replicate again today that the former Liberals and Bonnie Crombie wants to bring back to the people of Ontario? Absolutely not. Like, no, no, no. That cannot be a policy we want to revert back to. Energy poverty, the most expensive hydro rates on the continent. Absolutely not, Speaker. That is not a program for success. It is a recipe for disaster, and we cannot allow the families of this province to reap the economic hardship of ideologues instead of those that actually believe in the affordability, the dream of living in this province with promise. And that's why we initiated the largest storage fleet expansion, really the first storage fleet expansion in Canada, 3,000 megawatts, which is the third largest storage fleet in North America. The third largest storage infrastructure is being built in this province, the largest in Canada by far in every metric. 3,000 megawatts of power. So that allows us to store those renewable resources. When it is sunny, when it is windy, we could store the power and use it for peak purposes, thus keeping our bills low. Instead, before we were spilling it, wasting it, or selling it at a loss. Again, this can only be considered a failure of government. When you're in your room, you know, I've had the privilege of being in this ministry since June. I've been in cabinet for 5.5 years. And when I'm in the room, we respect our public servants. 5 long years. That's the one thing I'll agree with the honourable member. They were long years. But when you're in the room, the objective is not to go along to get along with our officials. I mean, we respect them and their independent advice. It is to challenge their assumptions. And on this issue, when it came to the desire of the province to build out our fleet, our storage fleet, to build out our long-term procurement, everything we did was through the lens of driving down prices for our families. And the Auditor General has recommended to government to use competitive procurement, which has, to date, my friends, reduced prices or costs by 30%. We're talking about billions of dollars. This is not an insignificant savings to the ratepayer or the taxpayer. And this is what we can get out of the Affordable Energy Act. You know, I was with the member from Mississauga Lakeshore. We were proud to represent Canada and Ontario in Poland and Estonia, where we're selling our clean energy advantage, our nuclear advantage to the world. In Poland, we secured an export agreement, a $40 million investment from the Polish government that allows Ontario, essentially, it's the enabler for us to sell to them small modular reactors. They have coal energy like we did 20+ years ago. They want to get off coal. The European Union is requiring this, and they're turning to Canada's clean energy future. They're turning to our proven track record. It was a source of pride to be in a global market on the world stage, advancing the cause of Ontarians, knowing that the deals we secure abroad are creating jobs and dignity for families back home. That is the ultimate form of satisfaction as a person in this space. The know that we can really help deliver energy security for our European partners, particularly Eastern European partners, who want to rid their supply of Vladimir Putin's natural gas and petroleum and nuclear fuels. We can literally provide them. The German Chancellor came to Canada begging us for our resources. At what point does our country wake up and realize that the bounty of our natural resources can be exported to the world to support the energy transition, yes, to reduce emissions, but to grow our economy, to create jobs. And while they may not do so at their level, at the provincial level, we are exporting our clean tech and nuclear fleets to the world. Our expertise, our ingenuity, our technology, our proven track record demonstrates to you and to every Ontarian that we can build large and small nuclear fleets on time and on budget. And this is the same message we delivered in Estonia. The exact same message, a country literally on the front lines of the Baltic states of Russian aggression. And they are so grateful that Ontario and Canada takes an interest in this part of the world. And we see massive export opportunities for our small modular reactors. We signed an agreement with a private company in partnership with the government of Estonia to build out their first SMR, as we're doing in Poland. And I'm proud that this is not the first. Within my first days, I was off to Romania to announce the refurbishment of a CANDU reactor at the Cernavoda nuclear station in Romania, where we're going to be refurbishing one of their Canada reactors, $370 million for the people of Ontario, overwhelmingly domestic supply chain benefits. That is leadership. And so, Speaker, if we want to deliver the reliable, clean, affordable energy future Ontarians deserve, then I implore our colleagues today, vote for the Affordable Energy Act. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Speaker. Further debate?